Hey guys, Mr. Usher here. I'm starting up the recorded lessons again. I know there was a gap of a couple weeks, partially due to the break, partially due to some personal stuff on my end. But yeah, I'm trying to get back into the swing of these, so hopefully those of you who have missed class will be helped out by these. Anyway, for this first one, it's going to be for our full credit class. The date will be April the 25th, 2022, so it was Monday, April the 25th. So that's what we have here. Of course, as usual, if you are not one of the full credit students, if you meet me during the 5th period or the 8th period, you should look elsewhere. Anyway, get that out of the way. Topic for today, psychotic and dissociative disorders. Now, because there's been so much confusion on this, and I really should have anticipated more of this than there actually was, let me clear some stuff up right away. We use the term psycho sometimes to refer to people. Crazy is kind of a similar term. These terms don't really mean much of anything, right? Really, all you're really saying if somebody is crazy or psycho is just that they seem strange to you, right? Yeah, you could see somebody talking to themselves, maybe because they hear a voice in their head. You could say, well, that's psycho. Not that really meaning anything. But then I could see you, for example, compulsively wearing your ear pods, even though I've told you many times not to. And I could say that's psycho, because why would you wear them to school and keep wearing them, if you're not supposed to, right? So there's a lot of subjectivity in that, and it doesn't really mean much of anything on its own. The word psychotic actually means something more specific in psychology. It essentially means a perceptual break from reality, right? So somebody is experiencing psychosis or psychotic symptoms if they are essentially perceiving things in the real world that don't have any corresponding sensations, right? So, for example, if I snap my fingers and make a sound, and I hear that sound, right? Hopefully you can hear it as well. You hear that sound, right? You're hearing that sound because I'm actually making sound, and that sound is an actual sensation that's being picked up by your ears. That's what sensation is. It requires a physical part of our body to take in some type of stimulus, whether it's light hitting our eyes, sound waves interacting with our ears, food particles interacting with our tongue and our nose, or, basically the surface of an object, like the table that I have here, interacting with our skin. There needs to be some kind of interaction in the physical sense. Then that becomes a perceptual or subjective experience in our brains, right? With psychosis, you have these perceptual experiences, even though there is no sensation. And in addition, there's this general kind of break with how reality is understood and interpreted, right? So you're kind of clear who you are and, for the most part, where you are, but you misunderstand things that are out in the world, both through hallucinations, which is like what I just described, getting the perceptions without sensations, and through delusions, which essentially are grandiose or extreme beliefs that you have that are based on little to no evidence. Examples of a delusion could be like, people all that I'm interacting with in the street are actually CIA agents that are trying to arrest me, or, I'm being followed by somebody behind me who's trying to hurt me, or maybe something more positive and extreme, like, people are being nice to me today because they want to vote for me for president, and I'm going to be president next year. In any case, there are these extreme beliefs that aren't really based in much, and together these kind of things form what we call psychosis, right? We talk about that basically in this video here. Before that, we did have a DIN, right, which essentially asks you guys to do some review questions on anxiety disorders from the previous week. So if you were paying attention to the lessons from the previous week, it should be okay. If not, you might be in trouble. The video goes over schizophrenic and dissociative disorders. Schizophrenia is probably the most well-known and the most common psychotic disorder, right? There are others, but schizophrenia is definitely the most well-known and common. Basically involves a number of different things that you can kind of see here with some of the diagnostic criterion. We break these symptoms down into positive symptoms and negative symptoms. Positive symptoms are not good things or pleasant things. They're basically things that are added on to a standard or normal experience, right? So typically, if you're going around the world, you're interacting with reality in a normal way, normal, healthy way, you would not experience these, but these things are added on to schizophrenia, which is why they're called positive. So examples in this are delusions, like I was talking about, these grandiose beliefs, hallucinations, which are you kind of hearing things most often, sometimes seeing things, or having other kinds of hallucinations. And then, also maybe something like, really rapid speech, like your mind is trying to throw out words at a mile a minute and you can't really get them out properly. But there's also negative symptoms, right, which they talk about here, right? So negative symptoms are the opposite. They're things that you probably should have if you're mentally healthy, but that you're lacking in the case of schizophrenia. So this could be things like catatonia, just not moving for long periods of time, being emotionally flat, right? They talk about diminished emotional expression here. Not being able to put words together, right? So kind of being speechless, right? Maybe you hear a question, but you just can't arrange the words, right? So these are negative symptoms, but together they kind of involve a brain or a mind that is kind of split, hence the name schizophrenia. That's where that actually comes from. The mind is kind of split and fractured and disorganized, and so it kind of seems like all these normal processes that will be going on are kind of mixed up and jumbled, and it's difficult for a person to interact with the world cognitively, emotionally, socially, what have you. That's schizophrenia. Again, kind of the main psychotic disorder we're focusing on. There are also dissociative disorders, right? So dissociative disorders affect how we perceive reality as well, but in a different way, right? So with psychotic disorders, how you as an individual perceive reality is affected, right? So you're in the world. Most of the stuff in the world seems normal and regular to you, but there are some extra things that are kind of like bothering you. With dissociation, on the other hand, it's the you that's the problem, or your sense of yourself, right? Your consciousness is separated to some degree from reality, right? So you're generally not with a dissociative condition, hallucinating things or having delusions. You're not having a break from how you perceive reality. You're having a break from you, or your personal experience of reality. So you can have depersonalization when you strongly feel like you are not your own person, like maybe you're actually watching this other person who looks like you, kind of interacting in the world. You can have derealization, where it feels like everything around you is a dream, maybe kind of foggy or unclear. And that can be dangerous, right? Because you go around assuming that things are not real, right? You can have, situations where you have a dissociative fugue. You basically wander around, having forgotten who you are temporarily and kind of do random things. And you will come out of the fugue maybe hours later, maybe days later, maybe weeks, maybe months. And things are very different for you. You're in a place maybe you've never been before, wearing different clothes, having objects you don't know why you have. You could have just general dissociative amnesia, which is basically when you get a temporary amnesia that is not caused by any kind of physical damage to your brain, but instead is caused by, usually we think a traumatic incident kind of keeping your brain from accessing this memory. The memory is still in there. It's not taken away, but it's difficult to access because of this dissociation. And then there's the most controversial one, which they talk about in the video here. And that is dissociative identity disorder, or as you might have heard of it before, multiple personality disorder, right? We don't really use that term anymore. We use dissociative identity disorder. And as you can see, this has kind of got a lot of issues with it in terms of how we define it, how we diagnose it, how we treat it, all kinds of stuff, right? Very basically, as it says here in the Psychology Today article, a person with DID has two or more distinct identities or personalities present in a single body, and they alternatively take control, right? Typically, there's the real you, which is kind of considered the standard or control personality, and then there are alters. Alters being these alternative personalities that occasionally come out. What do we have here, right? So basically people with this condition, as kind of described by the DSM, will have these kind of criterion. They'll have at least two or more personalities, kind of like I suggested. There's a disruption in their identity involving changes of their sense of self, like who are they, their sense of agency, how well they feel like they can control things around them, changes in their behavior, right, which is common to a lot of mental illnesses. Their consciousness, right, so they might be just like less aware of things around them, or they might perceive things in a fundamentally different way. Their memories can change, their perception changes, their cognition changes. They seem like a totally different person. They don't seem like they even are interacting with the same information, which is why they basically the control or the default personality does not seem to remember what happened with the alters, right? There should be frequent gaps in the individual's memory of personal history. So like we know certain things happen to them. We're maybe verifying that with like video footage or corroborated by other people's eyewitness testimony. But the person insists they do not remember this, that they did not do these things. You could even show them a video of them doing this thing while they're in the altar, and they'll be just like, I have no memory of this, you know? Of course, the symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, other important areas. Basic distress component. Deviancy is clearly there. Most people just have the one personality. And dysfunction, you could definitely see, right? If you're just suddenly switching to a different person, it might be hard to do a job or maintain a relationship with somebody. The big thing here is DID is very controversial. It's even alleged by some mental health professionals not to exist at all, but instead to be made up either intentionally or unintentionally by therapists. There's at least some cases of therapists deliberately falsifying DID criterion because they want to make money, right? They want to make money off of this sensational patient they have. In other cases, they may have just kind of inadvertently suggested it. Maybe they kind of pushed these ideas of other personalities onto the patient, and the patient just kind of went along with it eventually, maybe because they wanted attention or maybe because they were very suggestible. There probably are some people out there that really have DID, but they're probably extremely rare, right? If you've actually met somebody, it's highly unlikely that you've actually met somebody with this disorder before, unless you actually work extensively in mental health, right? So if you are a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist, maybe a social worker, some kind of mental health professional, maybe you've actually seen one or two cases of this, but in reality, they're likely extremely rare. So I just want to emphasize that. Anyway, that's for the most part the lesson, right? Having gone over those criterion. The ticket out the door just asks you to kind of describe very basically what the difference is between dissociation and psychosis, right? So again, similar in that the person who has one of these, if you have one of these, you're not interacting with reality in the way that you should be. But they're different, in how that break from reality occurs, right? Anyway, that's basically it. If you have questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next time.